Hey there! I recently started 3D printing with this Labist X1 printer, and I'm just going to make a little quick getting started review video. All the prints you see in this video are going to be made with this Labist printer using the Lab Slicer software that comes in the box on the SD chip. Just so you guys know to answer any questions out the gate. So in this video I'm going to show you how to switch the filament, level it, talk about it, and it's been great. I didn't know anything about 3D printing before getting this, and just by buying this unit and using their website, I was able to get started, print anything I saw on the internet, and even model my own stuff and print that out. So in terms of just dropping $100 and getting started, you really can't beat this little X1. It does maybe about 40 millimeters a second print speed. If I'm doing that correctly, I'm not quite sure on all the settings and exactly what they mean, but it is a little slower than other ones on the market, but I'll get to that when I talk about the prints. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to just getting this thing out of the box, the only thing that's disconnected is the Z-axis, this up and down bar. It takes 2 screws with the included screwdriver to connect. It maybe takes 5 minutes to get filament in it and get it running. Now, what you don't see in the video is this build plate that did not like my cheaper filament. So the filament got stuck there, but it was a great build plate while it lasted. I liked it, you know, you pop it off, you pop it on, you level it out. It works pretty well. Now I'm using a triple layer of tape on top of their magnet. So really all that I did was take this off and add tape. So there's a layer of orange duct tape, a layer of packing tape, and the final removable layer of just straight up painter's masking tape. Now, everything is super duper level. Each edge of the tape is smooth, so that's just super important. I had nothing wrong with their build plate. It just didn't like my filament, and I'm the type of person who just won't buy another build plate. So when it comes to getting this thing going, it has 4 buttons on the main panel. It has a USB out, it has an SD card, and it has a little AC adapter. Essentially all you do to turn it on and off is manually unplug the AC adapter, turns on, the span fins up. It's pretty quiet, it's pretty fast. I don't have any complaints about the operation of it. It's absolutely wonderful. So let's just get started by removing this filament, and then I'll get into leveling it and all that. So to remove filament that you have in there already, essentially what you're going to want to do is preheat it with the plus symbol. And now what that's going to do is loosen up all this filament. And the preheat time is maybe about 60 seconds. So while that's going, you get your other filament ready. You know, the other thing that's missing from this is the filament feeder spool. I broke that in my hands. I'm too strong. I really can't chalk that one up to the company. And the little spool just would hang off from the end, and it holds about, 10-20 meters of the included filament. And it feeds fairly nicely, but I haven't had a problem feeding it from various, contraptions that I've built. This is a kilogram spool. What's in it now is another kilogram spool, which is being top fed off of essentially just a little bit of more filament. And I haven't had any problem with this. It's just how I keep it out of the way. Now it's starting to get warm, and you can see that the nozzle is starting to extrude just the littlest bit. A must-have tool is a little wood chisel. And you can just go up, and you can see once it starts to just get a little bit out, you can kill the preheat and start back feeding it with the negative button, the minus symbol. And I just like to give it a little help and pull on it, and just keep, getting that preheat, that prime off, and there you go. It's out. You rack this up, you get it out of the way. You press the minus symbol again, and it's going to stop back feeding essentially. Now what you're going to want to do is press the plus symbol again, get it preheated, get your new filament. Get it in there, and I like to give it a little push, and you can start to feel it feeding, and you can just give it the slightest tug back, and you just want to make sure that it's not going to come out of there. So once you feed it in there, I'd say maybe a ½ inch, you're good to go. And I just like to check the preheat and get all the little nozzle parts out. Be careful, this is hot. The nozzle gets especially hot, so you may see me grabbing in there and touching stuff and all kinds of stuff like that, but I assure you, I'm being careful. Alright, that's all set. Now what you're going to want to do is make sure that the nozzle is clean. And when they ship, they actually test each nozzle, so there is a little bit of test filament, PLA filament, coming out of the tip. So make sure your nozzle is clean and level. Now this is all preheated. There's no filament coming out of the nozzle. I'm going to press the home button and level this right now. And essentially what it's going to do is it's going to go down. It's going to hit all of its zeroing marks and get ready for the leveling process. Now the best way to do this is once it's in its home position, is just unplug it. Now you're going to have to articulate the arm and articulate the build plate to get it into position, and you're also going to need a piece of paper to level this. So it's really easy. Point 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're all in front of the screws, and it's pretty much the corners of the maximum build dimensions, which is 100 millimeters in every direction. You know, 100 millimeter cube is the maximum thing this can push out. So from its home position, depending on where you have the build plate and where the build plate goes, it should look like this. And I'm going to start at position 1. So all you got to do is drag this forward and make sure that it's just in front of the screw. Now what you're going to want to do is grab the piece of paper and get it in between the nozzle. Now this is super duper loose. I can tell just because the paper goes in between it. It goes back and forth super easy. So what you're going to want to do is go underneath to these screws. And if you make the screws tighter, you bring the plate down. If you make the screws looser, you bring the plate up. So I want to bring the plate up, so I just start making it looser. And then I check the paper. Still way too loose. Pretty much all you're going for is just a little bit of resistance. Now if you sit down and observe this printer while it prints, you'll see exactly how it works and what you're going for. You pretty much want to replicate an ideal fill mark or an ideal stride to this printer. I've loosened it up and now you can tell that it's starting to get a little resistance. Now pretty much what I go for when it comes to leveling is just enough for me to go back and forth with one hand. I don't need to pull the other side. I can just easily go back and forth. Now leaving the piece of paper on there, I'm going to go to position 2 by moving the build plate to the left. And it should go all the way to the left before it's underneath that screw, or right in front of that screw I should say. This one's also loose, so I'm just going to loosen it up and lift that plate up. And I'm right about there. And now what I do before I go to 3 is I go back to 1. 1's pretty good. I'm going to tighten it up. It got a little bit tighter because I raised that plate. And now I'm going to go to position 3 after I check 2 once more. Position 3, super duper loose. Everything is super duper loose on this one right now to make a great video. So I'm loosening that rear 3rd position screw. And you'll get in tune with it. And I would say I need to tune this up maybe every almost 20 hours of printing. I did about 20 hours of prints the other day, and they all came out very good. Those are coming up. And I really only tune it at the beginning of the day, every day, and then I just print. So that's good. I'm going to check the previous position, which is now way too tight, and I'm just going to tighten that screw until it's back to where I want it. And you can get a little bit crazy with it now. Once you learn it, it's just super fast and second nature. So always check the previous position before you move on, and that'll save you a lot of time. So I'm just double checking and making sure that it's creating a good run that I want. And then I'm going to go to the final position, which is 4. Again, super loose. And I'm going to loosen this screw to raise that build plate. And we're great. Everything is good. Usually when you get to 4, 3 is good. 2's a little bit tight, but it'll still print like that. I really wouldn't worry about it. This is just a little excessive tuning because I'm not using a factory build plate. And position 1 is a little tight right now, but now it's all fixed up, tuned, and ready to go. So you can check the timer on the video. And see how that worked out. Now what I like to do is just make sure that everything is level and ready to go. Plug it back in. Now before you start printing, after a good tune, you're going to want to hold the play button for 3 seconds and raise the arm. And I like to do that 3 or 4 times, because that's what the instructions say. So that's 3. Let's do it 4 for good luck. There we go. So now once I press play, once I load the SD card, it should be ready to go. But let's just show off some prints before I get this thing going. We'll start with something small. A good benchmark of mine is the classic Inception top. And I'm just going to show them here on the build plate so you guys get an idea for how big this thing can build. It does a great job on the Inception top. The Inception top spins fairly well. I don't think that was in frame. Let's try and get it on the Labist box here. There you go. It does a great job at replicating video game stuff, such as the Fallout 4 Nuka-Cola bottle. Pretty large, hollow, and a decent quality print, in my opinion. Now, when we get into bigger, more complex stuff, there's this little ocarina, which is hollow, playable, for the most part. I scaled it down, so I can't chalk it up to that. And that's a really good build, in my opinion, because it's got a lot of intricate holes, it's hollow, and it's probably easier than I think it is, but that one came out really nice. And then when it comes to more of like smaller, more detailed figurines, we have Baby Yoda here. That does a great job, and I'm going to press preheat right now and get ready for this print so you guys can see how to start that. So before you start a print, preheat it, clean the nozzle, and then we'll be ready to load the SD card and press play, essentially, and it'll do its thing. Baby Yoda came out really well. It's got words in the bottom that are actually somewhat legible. Again, this is scaled down. Now, when we get into full scale, these are 6-hour prints that this thing can pull out. So we have Abe from Abe's Oddworld, and all this stuff I'm showing you is available on Thingiverse. So you can literally go download this, plug it into this printer, and tune it up, and pull prints like this. So this is a 6-hour Abe's Oddworld bust. I think it came out wonderful. It's one of my finest works. And again, you just have to be in tune and observe some smaller benchmark figures, get the tuning right to where you want your prints to pull, and you'll be in business. Another big one I have is the Zen Gnome. That's about the biggest one I've done. That's another 6-hour, 5 to 6 hour print. These are all using Stronghold Rainbow Filament. And I mean, this thing is pulling out some really good detail, and it's all dependent on your original model. So if your model is no good, or your model wasn't originally formatted to be printed, or things like that, you really have to pay attention and become in tune with the Lab Slicer software, and that's going to be another video for another day. Now this is feeding great. I can see that the old filament is out. The old yellow gold filament is out, and that the gray filament is feeding. This is 3D Salute Tech silver gray printer filament. Alright, it's preheated, the plus symbol has stopped. I have a preloaded G-code. It is the freshest on the top file of the SD card, and it'll print whatever your newest loaded thing is on that SD card. So usually I just do it 1 G-code at a time, and then it's good to go. And essentially what you're going to want to do is press play. The play button will flash, and it is now loading that G-code and getting ready to print. Now, one thing I like to do, because these are all not entirely custom slices, I do use custom settings. I get the nozzle a little bit warm. But one thing I really like to do is just nip off the first point when it preheats. So in a moment, this arm is going to start to articulate, zero out, etc. It's going to preheat, and in the spout is just going to be the slightest bit of preheated filament, and I'm just going to go in there with this chisel tool and nip it off as light as I can. You don't really want to manipulate or hit or do anything to this while it's working. Just let it work, observe it, see what's going on, and try and learn. And once you get everything in tune, you'll really learn a lot about the process. So as you can see, it's going, it's zeroing out. I'm just keeping this out of the way because I have it in frame for the video, of course. and it's preheating and there's a lot of goop, and I just nip that goop off like that. It's in this back left corner and it's ready to go. Now it's started printing, and I'm just gonna look inside the old, in between the build plate and everything, and make sure that it's flowing nicely and it's doing a good job. And I want to make sure that the first round is a good round, and it is, and that everything has a good flow to it. There's no hitches, there's no over extrusions, there's none of the preheated filament getting in the way of it. And it looks like it's going extremely well right now. This is just a small little print. So usually the first thing that the machine does is do a build plate, do a brim, do a raft. And really how you check for tuning is you want to make sure that your rafters are nice and clean looking. You can see that this is a nice little brim of a spider. And it does a really good job at accurate printing. It's as accurate as you make it when you tune it up right. So this is going to go now. I've really been enjoying the Labist printer. It is the quickest, easiest way to start pulling some real tactile artwork. I mean, crazy. It is the best way to start pulling things like that. The cheapest way, no assembly required. Everything I was looking at within this price range of around $100 actually costs, you know, $140, but then it's like a 10-hour assembly time. So that's really where it's at. So I think that Labist is doing it right. The customer service, the people there are super helpful, and everything like that. Because when I had a problem with my build plate, they instantly were like, well, you need to tune it like this. You might want to do it. And they're just super helpful and super quick. So check out the Labist X1 if you're interested in 3D printing. It's very bare bones and teaches you a lot, is the most I can say about it. And as always, thanks for watching.